Hello, everyone. This is Ellie Crumpholtz from the Cognition IP team. I'm joined today by my teammate Christian, who will be assisting me with Q&A during this webinar. It is our pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, Critical Updates on Patenting AI. Before we get started, I want to go over just a few housekeeping reminders. The first is that we've muted everyone upon entry. We do that to avoid background noise and disruptions during the presentation. But even though we've muted you, we do want this to be an interactive session. So please feel free to drop your questions and comments into the chat box throughout the presentation, and we'll have time to tackle those during Q&A at the end of the presentation. Just a friendly reminder that when doing so, make sure you select everyone from the drop-down menu so that we can all see your questions. And finally, a friendly reminder that this session is being recorded and you will receive a follow-up email with the session recording tomorrow. So now it is my pleasure to introduce Ed Stakely, Managing Shareholder of Cognition IP. Ed has over 23 years of experience building patent and trademark portfolios and creating IP strategies, formerly as senior in-house counsel at two Fortune 5 companies, including Apple, and as senior associate at a top-ranking firm. So without further ado, Ed, take it away.
Thank you, Ellie, for the introduction, and welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We have people attending from different time zones. Just before I begin, just a little bit about Cognition IP. So we started out as a tech startup incubated through Y Combinator. We have a law firm, Cognition IP, and then a tech company, Cognition IP, where we have developed different technology based on machine learning with respect to patent development. So that's where we initially started. Our team members, most of us have a computer science background, and we've had experience as systems analysts, software engineers, developers, and whatnot. So we've actually slung a lot of code in our time as well. But we're also patent attorneys, and one of our team members, he is a former patent agent as well, and he has a computer science background. Yeah, so the reason why we're putting this presentation on is over the last year or so, we've seen a lot of interesting developments in patenting artificial intelligence, and there's been a lot of new innovation in the area of generative AI, and um, we've seen some trends that I'd like to share with you. We're going to go through an AI patent landscape. This gives you some background on what does patenting historically look like over the last many years from the US and from the EPO perspective, European Patent Office perspective. And then built upon the patenting of artificial intelligence, the criteria for patenting inventions is important to understand and discuss, because that really is what is impacting what can be patented with regard to artificial intelligence. And then as part of that, we wanted to discuss with you subject matter eligibility, like what is an examiner looking at in the US to determine whether an invention, and this is true to any invention, but applicable to artificial intelligence inventions, how does an examiner evaluate whether the invention itself is patentable subject matter? And then wanted to bring to your attention that there are guidelines that were provided by the USPTO regarding what could be patented, and they give examples. And then I think from this discussion, what you may really want to focus on here is the summary of US patentable subject matter. Here, what I'm trying to do is identify what likely will not be patentable and what will be patentable. So that is a really important takeaway, and we'll spend some time on that. So from a patent standpoint, you'll understand what do you really need to do to patent an artificial intelligence based invention, and this is true to any software invention as well. And then just wanted to bring to your attention that there's some US legislation in Congress right now that was initiated, and just let you know that there are some senators and representatives that are trying to change the existing law to allow for more patentability of which would impact software inventions and artificial intelligence inventions. And then lastly, I wanted to discuss with you considerations of whether or not to patent an AI-based invention, so we'll get to that as well. So first, I wanted to give you kind of a perspective of patenting of AI-based inventions over the last many years. So I used an AI-based tool to do patent searching, and my criteria for that was many terms related to AI, neural networks, machine learning, artificial intelligence, et cetera. And it's a semantic search. So the data that we see here, take it with a grain of salt, that it probably pulls in a lot more patents and applications than are really patenting AI inventions. But it does show us a trend of what's going on generally at the US Patent Office. And you can see there's this huge spike 2019, 2020. The green shows inventions or inventions that have a description of some aspect of machine learning or artificial intelligence in the body of the patent application. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the patent itself covers AI, but the patent has a discussion of it. So there's some functionality of some sort that's described in the patent application. And what you can see, what's really most important, I think, here is these last couple of years that um, there will naturally be a tail of uh, patents being granted, but you can see in 2023 and 2024, it's dropped off significantly. And this is partly due to how the US Patent Office is viewing artificial intelligence related inventions and training of machine learning models. And I'll get into that discussion. And then as a comparison, you can see as compared to the European Patent Office. So here, there's actually a very similar trend of applications filed, but with the European Patent Office, the patents granted are much more reduced than in the US. So all in all, it is very difficult overall to get a patent in the European Patent Office to be granted with respect to artificial intelligence. And I think a lot of these patents that were filed, they I would expect that many of them discuss a training of a machine learning model and using it to process data. And that's where I think a lot of these inventions are getting into trouble and not making it through either patent office. And I'll get into a discussion of why that is. So I also did a search to see at this tail of 2024 patents. Uh, I wanted to see what was making it through the patent office, because I think a good rule of thumb is with those patents that are making it through the US Patent Office today, those are good patents to study, understand the claiming structure of a patent for the invention to get a sense of what is making it through the patent office. And what was making it through the patent office a couple of years ago is not the same as today. So the strategies and the way that one claims an invention is really important. It always has been, but even more so today for AI-based inventions. And here you can see I just highlighted last week, just pulling all the patents that were granted that related to AI in some way in the patent application. We actually had two of them that were recently granted as well. So we very much are involved in understanding what's going on with artificial intelligence patenting, and we really try to study the patent office and understand by comparison what others are doing as well to see how is it that they're able to get a AI patent through. And there's some tricks and techniques to claim to get a patent through the patent office regarding artificial intelligence. Okay, so I think we need to just first set a basic understanding of patenting criteria in the US. We basically have three criteria for the most part. One is that the claim 101 has to meet statutory category. I'll get into that. And then you have to have a novel and not obvious invention. Novel means that for the most part, it's not been publicly used before, or there's not some type of um, document that describes the invention. And not obvious means that basically they're not documents that an examiner can combine together to come up with the invention. And typically, novelty and obviousness is something that one can deal with. But unless you get over the 101 hurdle, then it could be that you have a novel, non obvious invention, but it's not a statutory subject matter that can be patented. So 101 is really what we're dealing with for the most part with AI based inventions. So going further in depth into 101, what the US Patent Office allows for patenting is our processes, machines, manufacturers, compositions of matter, and certain types of plants. For the most part, for artificial intelligence, we're talking about a process of some type of software that is performing some type of functionality. And because of uh, distant Supreme Court cases uh, such as Bilski and Alice, what the Supreme Court has done is provided a framework that an examiner really must follow to determine whether something's patentable. And often what we're seeing is that in the area of software and use of machine learning models, that the patent office is rejecting patent claims on those types of inventions because they're basically saying that those types of processes are abstract ideas. So when a patent application is filed or drafted for an artificial intelligence invention, one really has to ensure that the way a claim is drafted, that it gets out of 101. So that's what we do, and we really need to understand from a functional perspective. If we can't get out of 101, then we know that we're not going to be able to get a patent on something. So that's something that we really spend a lot of time on understanding an invention to even see if it can be patented. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail of this uh, flow chart, but this is basically what an examiner is looking at. They're applying an evaluation to a set of claims. First, they're saying if it's statutory subject matter, and then there's another test to see if it's an abstract idea and if there's any exceptions, significant type of functionality, if you will, that will get out of an abstract idea. So when we file a patent application, an examiner is following a analysis to determine whether or not something is basically eligible or not. And if an examiner makes it through this flow chart, they provide a basis and they describe why something is an abstract idea. But this is analysis that they basically go through. And what we need to do is be able to draft claims for an invention that keep us out of the 101 area. Earlier this year, the patent office, they provided some guidance for artificial intelligence patents. So here, these links will take you to Federal Register, and the USPTO website where they give examples of what is patentable and what is not patentable. So this is a really good reference if you're drafting claims for artificial intelligence inventions. And in my summary, I will give you examples from my experience of what I think would pass 101 and what would not. But this is a good reference. I'm not going to go into it in any detail. You can review it if you'd like, but it really shows you what might be patentable and what might not be patentable. Okay. With respect to patentable eligible subject matter, what we have experienced over the last couple of years is that I think early on when patent applications were being filed, there was, I think, in the area of the use of machine learning models, there are a lot of patent applications that were filed that covered some type of basic training, um, and then some data input to a model, and then some classification or prediction of a machine learning model. And that that type of recipe where you have this trained model, you have some inputs and outputs, often would be allowed. So if you recall back to the uh, slide, the graph with a lot of patents being issued 2019, 2020 timeframe, that many of those patents made it through the patent office. But what we've seen recently because of the new guidance and whatnot, many of those patents that were issued probably would not make it through the patent office today. So what we're seeing is that when you have software that's performing a process, and in particular using some type of artificial intelligence where the software or the system is really just doing some type of data processing or using algorithms to process data, and that's the invention in a patent application, that's not going to make it through the patent office today. You really need more functionality, and I'll get into some of that. Like, how do you actually make something patentable that goes beyond just the areas of machine learning training, machine learning model training, and use of the machine learning models. Um, and we've seen too that just data processing, like I said before, that's using the machine learning model and then presenting output in a user interface or general data processing of some sort that is processing data and presenting it. Those types of inventions, if you're just trying to focus on that, that is not going to make it through the patent office. Those are easy to kind of understand and spot. Like if you have a system, and especially in the area of some type of business processing, let's say, of some type of data that one might be aggregating, and you're applying some machine learning model to it and coming out with some output and then presenting that in a user interface. That alone, I don't think today would make it through the patent office. So we have to understand, well, can then any artificial intelligence invention, software invention be patented? And the answer to that is definitely yes. It's just that you need to know how to do it in advance of filing the patent application. You really have to have the support for this other area of functionality that I'll get into next, of what needs to be described to get the get the patent through the patent office. Okay, so this is a important slide where what I've done here is over the last year, we've been really trying to understand what's making it through the patent office and what is not. And if there's a recipe to getting a software-based patent, artificial intelligence patent through the patent office, US Patent Office, these are ways to do it. Okay, so what does that mean? So generally with software, when you're doing any type of data processing, which most software inventions, of course, would do, you have some data involved that you're either obtaining, you're analyzing it, processing it, doing something to it. That alone does not get something patented. But in the area of using the data in some way to provide some type of additional control, operation efficiency of a computer or of a device will be patentable. An example of that is we recently patented an invention in generally using an LLM based on some prompt, generating an output. So that alone is not patentable. But there's another active step of where that output then is being used to control subsequent operations of a server or of a computer system. So all of the functionality that might not be patentable, if there's a way where you can add some type of control or determination of an active process to be performed by a computer system or some type of device, that will likely get you out of 101. So that's some step or additional functionality. Again, we're still using the framework of trained models or artificial intelligence, LLMs and such. But what we need to do is when you look at that process, that data pipeline itself, if you can plug in some functionality before or after the use of the model, then there's an opportunity to obtain patentability. So another example is many inventions include some type of sensor, and the acquisition of the data and then the use of that data in a machine learning model may or may not be patentable if it's just a common sensor, like you're obtaining accelerometer data or GPS data or whatnot. That probably would not be patentable. But if you can think of ways of if you're using the sensor in some unique way to get the data and then apply it to the machine learning model, again, that the steps of what are you doing in a system or a process before you're using a machine learning model, that use of the sensors and in some way the sensor itself might be unique, which would make it patentable. But if you're using kind of known sensors, there might be a way that a process that is uh, interacting with different sensors to do the accumulation of the data in some unique way and then pump it into the machine learning model, that might be patentable. Another type of functionality that we found that is likely patentable is this is a kind of a step that we often include. So what we have seen is that before, with respect to training of a model and using it, like I said, uh, a few years ago, likely would be patentable, but without anything more, the patent office is considering that to be really just data processing. So what we are doing and have learned is that um, often if we can include some type of feedback or some type of dynamic training of the model, some type of continuous learning of the model, then if that's in the patent application, often that will also get us over this 101 issue. So again, what's making this unique is that it's not just data processing. There's some active step of the actual model being trained. So if that is included in these patent applications that were filed like many years ago, that's an opportunity to possibly get the invention patented. And many systems do have some type of supervised learning or some other type of continued training of the model. And to the extent that you have any type of process that does some type of active processing that then dynamically trains a model, that seems to be a good recipe to getting the invention patented. And then generally, just from a software perspective, uh, the area of unique user interface control itself, this relates to some AI type of inventions and um, where the interface is unique in some way and not just mere presentation of data or information. There's opportunities here to get an invention patented as well. But if you're just displaying data and receiving inputs and whatnot in a system, that's not quite enough. But I put this here because it is an opportunity to get an area of AI patented as well. And then uh, recently, I had a discussion with a patent examiner, and I was trying to get over this 101 issue. It was a lot of data processing, and the examiner initially did not give me a 101 rejection, and I was frankly surprised that I didn't get it, but I was happy that I didn't. But then through the continued examination of the patent application, I had to make some amendments to the claims, and the examiner did call me and was trying to help me work through the claims to get the patent allowed. But the examiner did say that the claims that she would and she should have given me a 101 rejection, but we were able to work through the invention a bit. And what she told me was if we include like the mere data processing, then that would the patent allowed. So I think where you have algorithms, machine learning, model training, but you are possibly rendering something unique via user interface, that's another area to possibly patent as well. So there are a lot of ways to get some of these patents through the patent office. You just need to know like what basically do you have to include to get the invention out of this 101 territory. In some other areas, so I think many companies are working on uh, like chat agents and um, using large language models and whatnot. And we see just generally a lot of that going on. And those inventions are patentable as well if you are creating some type of dynamic processes. So if you think about the patenting of AI, what's really important is the technical functionality that the system is creating. So when you think of an invention, I would say don't think of data. Don't think of what information the system is processing or whatnot. And it is important to a certain extent, but generally, the way to look at patenting of software generally in artificial intelligence inventions is what is a system or software process doing in terms of a technical functional process? And the process again has to go beyond just processing data. So maybe like an example of a chat agent, there could be like processes where there is workload balancing, determination of the number of agents to initiate to handle certain communications, or based on the communication, the context of information or data input by a user, possibly, let's say, like spawning or initiating additional services or whatnot. But you can see by that description, it's more technical. And I'm really not describing data so much. So to me, when you're just processing data, that's really a red flag to me that, okay, maybe this invention isn't going to be patentable. But with that said, I think if there is in if there's some type of novel functionality that a process is performing using some type of machine learning model of some sort, some LLM, CNN, etc., that those type of processes likely could be patented, but you just really need to find what's happening beyond that specific use of that model. So again, if you can think of how a model is being it could be like a dynamic creation or selection of models that are instantiated to be used, let's say, for different use context or whatnot. So something like that would likely be patentable because you have this active processing that's occurring maybe on a server or a service or whatnot. So the artificial intelligence type of process is likely going to be patentable. But, uh, if you don't have these active technical processes that really surround the specific machine learning model itself, then just training a model, just using an LLM to output some type of data of some sort isn't going to be enough. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, to patent machine learning model based use, but we always need to find what is the additional active process that the system is performing. Um, let's see. So here, maybe I might stop to see if anybody has any specific questions. But this slide really, I think, out of all of our discussion today, is really a key takeaway. Um, the main point being is that I think uh, artificial intelligence inventions are patentable, and the the specific use of a trained model can be patented. You just need to know how. In the area of the underlying technology. So if you're actually improving some type of model itself, the underlying functionality of how the software for that model performs, that's definitely patentable subject matter. So what we're really talking about here is what I see is that a lot of companies are using machine learning models as a tool to process data, and just that alone isn't enough. You just really need to have other technical functionality that surrounds that use in some way. Um, okay. So um, I think generally there's a lot of technologies that are being um, patented or attempted to be patented, and these these techniques to get a patent through the U.S. Patent Office is applicable to uh, the medical field, any type of software. It relates to autonomous vehicles and anywhere where you have some type of artificial intelligence that the invention really does need to go beyond just some type of a data processing step. And when you explore technology to patent, uh, you really need to understand what if you can really point to what beyond the use of a machine learning model itself is novel, what about it is technical, and then by combining that other process with the model is likely then something that can be patented. So with that said, in the US, over the last year, there are attempts by different representatives and senators to try to expand the scope of what is patentable in the US. There's some bills that have gone through Congress, and these bills, what they're attempting to do is to not quite overturn the Bill Skier Alice decisions, but give breadth again to what is patentable. So to really broaden 101 again. In the past, any type of process, business process, etc., would have been patentable. But because of the Bilski and Alice Supreme Court decisions, it really limited what could be patented. So in the US, there's some legislation that's trying to go through Congress, but all in all, it's estimated that these bills have a low chance of making it through the patent office. But the point here is, even if you have some type of invention, there's an opportunity to potentially file, park in a way a patent application and file it with non-publication requests. So it basically sits in the patent office. And then should the law change again, then you might have a patent that you could cover some type of process that otherwise isn't patentable today. And this slide here is a discussion about how how do you decide what to patent as a company, especially in the area of AI. So I think fundamentally, and this is true, I think with any type of invention, and then especially with software, is that we want to understand, does the technology itself, does it underlie or does it support some type of business revenue? I think from our perspective, there's a lot of opportunity to patent technology, but from a business perspective, it makes sense, possibly to protect that revenue through patents, um, if you can really tie the invention some way to that revenue. And a way to look at this is that if if a competitor were to copy that technology and use your same invention, is that really going to impact your revenue or not? So that's really an underlying fundamental consideration for patenting any type of invention. But then with respect to AI, we have considerations also of the way that the system is working. There's a concept of trade secret where when you file a patent application, essentially you're disclosing how something works to the world in return to possibly getting a patent on it. But sometimes some of that processing may be better left as a trade secret, meaning you don't file a patent on it. And then you have to ensure that that particular process is maintained as a trade secret, putting procedures in place so that no one understands how you're patenting, or how you're using that particular process. So once a secret is made known, you lose trade secret protection for it generally. And then with respect to patenting an AI invention as well, I I do think there is some value. I would say it's a little more intangible with respect to patenting any type of invention. Is that, as you may know, you can note patent pending or patented technology. So there is a marketing value, with respect to obtaining a patent on some technology. In two ways, it shows innovation of a company that you have patented some technology. And also, I found there's some relationship to having patented technology where you have customers, especially commercial type of customers, that know you have a patent on something, and it promotes what I call like customer stickiness a little bit. It's hard to really gauge how much that a patent influences that, but having a known patent on a technology, there's a risk to customers using a competitor that might be providing some type of similar technology. So there are ways to use patents generally, and in the area of artificial intelligence to help protect the business revenue in some way. So there's value in the patent in that regard. And then whenever you consider an invention to actually be patented, you do really want to go back to that list that I provided and see if you have anything there that goes beyond just data processing and presentation of data. So if that if you don't get beyond that, then I would say generally don't patent it. You're basically wasting your time and money to do that. But uh, if there's an opportunity to really find the technical glue, if you will, that glues together the artificial intelligence processing to some other technical part of the system, then that's at least worth considering patenting. Um, and then in those areas where I think from an AI perspective, if you really have some type of AI based control of some other device or of some server or of a computer using any type of machine learning process or artificial intelligence process, that's likely patentable. So you just need to know how to really describe that in a way to get it patented. But that I think is a really good area as well to be patented. So with that said, the opportunities to patent artificial intelligence, I think, are still really good. But you also need to work with someone who understands whether or not you have the chance of getting out of 101. So if you are considering patenting, just make sure that upfront, whomever you're working with and with your own knowledge here is to really like ask these questions, like what about this is goes beyond just data processing or use of machine learning models. And when you answer that question, that's where you'll find the technical functionality that likely, in combination with some machine learning model, artificial intelligence process, will be patentable. Um, yeah, so I think that is the end of my slides. Um, Ellie, are there any questions that we can address?
Yes. So, friendly reminder, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, feel free to drop them in the chat box and we'll go ahead and cover those. We did have several that came in with the webinar registration, so I'll just kick us off with some of those. The first being, why can't I just copyright my code instead of patenting it?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So there are different types of intellectual property, and they provide different protections. As you may know, there is, of course, patent, there's copyright, trade secret, trademark. A copyright is a protection for intellectual property that protects the reduction of some expression into some tangible form. So, copyright would protect code, as an example, written code that's created by a person and not AI. So, just as an aside, you can't. Well, there's question. It's questionable of whether or not you can protect AI-based creations through copyright. So that's a whole different topic. But with respect to copyright, what that basically allows one to do is if someone copies specifically that expression, so if they copy the code and create some variant of that code as a basis, then you can use copyright to protect against that copying of the code. So if somehow someone pulls off a website or whatnot, you have some type of code or uh, somehow uses code obtained in some other way, then with copyright, you have to have a copyright registration, though. You have to actually obtain the copyright registration to bring a copyright infringement suit to enforce it. But what copyright doesn't protect is functionality. It protects the particular expression in the form of the code. So you could have code that performs steps one, two, three, and you've written it in a certain way. Copyright registration and protection would protect that certain way that you've coded it in the particular variables, the particular instructions, etc., in the code. Whereas a patent will actually protect that functionality in the code. So a patent is broader in the sense that it protects how something works rather than the specifics of what it is, where copyright would protect what it is. So a patent then, if you have steps one, two, three that are written in different code and different ways of or different types of programming languages or whatnot, any of that could be protected by a patent, whereas a copyright would really only protect the reduction of that code that was written by a person in some variant of that. So that's the primary distinction between the two.
Thank you, Ed. Another question that came in was, should we try to patent if we're just using pre-existing tools?
Um, So the use of pre-existing tools, if you're just using the tool as is for its intended purpose, then I would say no. However, most inventions are actually built on the combination of components, and it's easier to understand, let's say, from a physical perspective, that you can have different mechanical structures or whatnot that are combined together, but those structures are known, but you're creating something new out of it. So, in the area of software, where you're using, for example, and I see this a lot, is you're using some open source project in some way, and then you're combining it with some other open source project. You might have your own private code or functionality that's being performed. So the way to look at this is if you're using some known or pre-existing software, it's the again, it's the glue that the technical interface between different components that could be patentable, or maybe how are you using that that known software or known project in some new technical way. So that's what you really would want to consider or look at to see is if you have like if you're using open source projects, for example, but you have some new technical process in some way where these systems might interface or the data is being created in some unique way, or that you're basically uh, creating some interactions between these different systems. So this one's harder to just answer yes or no. You really have to describe. It's like, okay, what is it that you are using that's known, and what have you done to it that is interesting or technically innovative, is how I'd ask that question. Like what about it is different, like the synergistic effect, that's the result, but you do need to understand like what is it that you've done to make these pieces work together, and that those interfaces or those processes is where there might lie patentable subject matter.
Thank you, Ed. I think we have time for just one more question from our audience. So with our final question, are AI-based products given a similar level of protection across jurisdictions?
Um, yeah, I think to answer that question, the answer is no. I think that AI-based inventions are rooted in software, and just generally in some jurisdictions, the concept of protecting software is lower than it is in others. As we saw earlier in the graphs, we saw that in the EPO, just generally artificial intelligence inventions are less likely to be patented as compared to the US. And generally, there are many jurisdictions that do allow patenting of artificial intelligence inventions. I would say like Australia, Canada, possibly Japan or Korea as well. But there are a handful of countries where one would want to consider protecting artificial intelligence inventions or spending the monies to invest and protect that type of invention. But I would say that as far as countries, I would say that the US is probably the most favorable right now to doing so, and maybe Australia as well. So, again, when you're filing a patent, just generally, you want to see if you can protect the invention in those jurisdictions where you are generating revenue or a significant amount of revenue. And typically, the US is one of the countries where you would want to do that, and just because of the likelihood of patenting in the US as compared to other jurisdictions and the legal framework that we have to enforce patents as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Ed. And thank you everyone for joining today. As a reminder, today's presentation was recorded and you will receive a follow-up email from me tomorrow with the session recording. We'd also love it if you would take a minute to complete our feedback survey, as your feedback is important to us when we're planning future events. So with that, again, thank you so much, Ed, and thank you to all for joining. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.